there. And we are so happy to have you here. And it's
Thank you.
there's never a good time, there's never a bad time to deal with the plastics nightmare in our world. So thank you, Eileen. It's all yours.
Okay, now I can't, my screen sharing isn't working the way I thought it would. Let me see, what did I do wrong?
Seeing your whole desktop.
You're
Right.
not wearing your hat.
Oh yeah, it's behind me, so that's
That's
not,
probably the problem.
yeah, well, I'm just very bad at this, like Jackie knows. Well, that's
You
the
just
same.
have to bring up whatever PowerPoint you want to share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just have it be on
Eileen?
the main screen.
Eileen, can I coach you, my dear?
Yeah, what do I need to, I need to get Guy back, maybe. Is this it?
If
Yeah.
your
There
power,
you go. You got it.
All right,
Okay.
Guy, but now is this it?
Yes.
I'm not getting my right screen here. No, it didn't come, it's not coming up.
Okay.
I think your slides are open, dear. You just have to share your screen.
No, I'm not seeing,
She's sharing the screen. She just needs to get to the presentation. Oh,
Yeah, we go back. Guys here helping me, sorry.
Well, it's good for the suspense, it always
Yeah,
builds
yeah.
the audience.
All right, maybe we should stop the recording briefly, but okay, here we go.
it
Oh,
can
it's
be.
not going full screen. I'm not seeing full screen, are you?
Well, what are they seeing? I'm seeing black.
You're seeing a black rim on the whole. What you can see. Okay, well, it's wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you for understanding the technical difficulties I sometimes have. So tonight I'm here representing Beyond Plastics, but I did get my start with all of you. So after seeing the movie Bag It, which was screened at the Watertown Public Library, and I think, Deborah, I'm pretty sure you organized that. So this is the Beyond Plastic slide. I was so inspired by that movie to do something because that movie talked about reducing single-use plastic shopping bag ban, talked about bans, that I actually contacted Tony and I asked, how could I get started on passing a single-use plastic shopping bag ban in Watertown? And Tony informed me that a group had already started to form and I joined them. All of us who worked on the ban were women, and my daughter used to call us the bag ladies. Wait, here we go. It took years of meetings and hearings and visiting shop owners, but finally we passed the ordinance and the ban went into effect in 2017. I wrote the content for an educational brochure and Leslie Evans illustrated it. Here's the illustrations. Soon we noticed that there were fewer plastic bags in the Charles River and fewer plastic bags hanging from the limbs of Watertown's trees. I was pleased with my work in the world until I watched The Story of Plastic, an amazing documentary film produced by the Story of Stuff about the global issue of plastic pollution. The screening was followed by a talk about plastic pollution led by Judith Enck, the teacher and founder of Beyond Plastics. She informed us that she was offering a class on plastic pollution, and I signed up for the next session that evening. I started the course in February of 2021, and I've been involved with Beyond Plastics ever since. And I founded Beyond Plastics Greater Boston, a local group of Beyond Plastics, in the spring of 2022. The modest goal of Beyond Plastics, which is based at Bennington College in Bennington, Vermont, is to end plastic pollution. They have an excellent website, which is right here, beyondplastics.org, which is an endless source of information on plastics and actions you can take to stop the tsunami of plastic pollution. Beyond Plastics focuses on upstream solutions to the environmental, ecological, and human health crisis of plastic pollution. One of the things I learned in The Story of Stuff that really motivated me to do more is that 50% of all plastic ever produced has been manufactured in the past 20 years. Most of us have lived without all of this plastic. Here is a chart that illustrates the exponential rise in plastic production since 1950. So how did we get here? Well, it has a lot to do with war, injustice, and the petrochemical industry, the opposites of peace, justice, and the environment. I've arranged my presentation to address these three categories and the devastating health consequences of plastics. I hope you'll learn something you didn't already know before tonight. So although some forms of plastics existed before World War II, plastic production really took off during the war as the demand for natural materials could not always be met. Acrylic or plexiglass replaced glass in cockpits, nylon replaced silk in parachutes, and boot heels and cables began to be made using polyvinyl chloride plastics. These are Rosies, and here the women who worked during World War II were called Rosies. And they are creating cockpits there in the factory. And then in this next slide, we have children who are collecting milkweed pods. So milkweed was used to stuff life preservers. I was in Honolulu on Pearl Harbor Day last year in December of 2023, and I met a woman who was a Rosie, and the job she had as a child was collecting milkweed, and I was amazed because today life preservers are filled with polyester and coated in polyurethane. So beginning in 1950, 5 years after the war ended, plastic production really took off. So this kind of shows you, this is in the Maldives, all this plastic here. So more than 10 billion tons of plastic were produced worldwide from 1950 to 1922. That's more than 1 ton for every person on the planet today. Over half of this amount was produced in the last 2 decades. So what we see right after World War II is companies like Dow Chemical and DuPont launched really aggressive ad campaigns to market plastics to everyone. So they've developed these plastics during the war, and now they want to go forward. So not only were they making plastic dishes, but they also are starting to make clothing out of chemicals. So along with the tremendous increase in the production of reusable plastics, the petrochemical industry created a campaign for a throwaway society to get people used to the idea of using things once and then throwing them away. But we know that there is no place called away. Most plastics today are used only once and then tossed away. You'll see here that 40% of plastics are made for packaging and one-time use. That is why bans on single-use plastics are so important. Note here also that textiles are fourth here, and we'll talk a little bit more about textiles later. So plastics are made from fossil fuels and chemicals, and most are made from a byproduct of hydrofracking called ethane. The chemicals used in plastics make them pliable or rigid, add color, and keep them from catching on fire. So here's a photo that illustrates how hydrofracking works. Fracking is a relatively new method of extracting gas from bedrock shale. Fracking destroys natural landscapes, pollutes groundwater, and causes unnatural earthquakes. And the plants you see here in the background are fracked gas plants under construction. Fracked gas is being produced in the environmental justice neighborhoods of Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Plastic is on track to outpace coal's greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. by 2030. The transportation of fracked gas through pipelines to seaports also leads to methane leaks along the way. Plastic production and pollution is a major environmental justice issue. This is Sharon Levine, an amazing activist from St. James Parish in Louisiana. She is dedicated to trying to hold the petrochemical industry accountable to for the environmental and human health degradation of her neighborhood. This area along the Mississippi River has the highest rates of cancer in the country. And this amazing graphic illustrates how the location of the current petrochemical plants that manufacture plastics are located on the grounds of former sugarcane plantations where the enslaved ancestors of people like Sharon once lived and worked. The people who live within 3 miles of these petrochemical plants experience the most health harms caused by petrochemistry. Not only does plastic production contaminate the air and water, it also destroys the soil and makes it impossible to have gardens. All right, so the fundamental problem here, of course, is racism. Environmental injustice is what makes plastic production possible, whether it's the siting of plants where plantations once existed or incinerating plastics in environmental justice neighborhoods in Massachusetts. Robert Bullard is the person who is considered to be the father of environmental justice. He is the author of 18 books, including, among others, Dumping in Dixie, Race, Class, and Environmental Quality, and The Wrong Complexion for Protection. So he's actually done a lot of work on solid waste issues, too. That's where he got his start. And this is a photograph of the toxic smoke that mushroomed into the air in East Palestine, Ohio on February 3rd of 2023 after the Norfolk Southern Railway train derailed en route from Louisiana to New Jersey. The train was 53 cars long. 5 cars contained vinyl chloride, a known carcinogen. Other cars contained nurdles, the small plastic pellets that are the basis of plastic manufacturing. After the derailment, the railway company decided to burn the vinyl chloride, releasing toxins into the air and water. The people of East Palestine are still suffering negative health outcomes and do not know what the future holds in store for them. 3 million people in the United States live within a mile of train tracks that carry the chemicals and feedstocks to make plastics. Beyond Plastics is currently involved in a campaign to get the EPA to finally ban vinyl chloride, which has been known as a carcinogen for well over 50 years. And this is the Shell Polymer Monica cracker plant in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, also under construction. It's located about 30 miles northwest of Pittsburgh. It was completed and started operating in 2022. This plant is part of a 365-acre petrochemical complex. A cracker plant is the term for a plant that processes ethane into plastics. Although the majority of petrochemical plants are in Louisiana and Texas, more are in line to be built in the Ohio River Valley. All of them are in environmental justice neighborhoods. According to Oil and Gas Watch, 481 new oil, gas, and petrochemical infrastructure projects have been built since 2012 and are permitted to release up to 136 million tons of greenhouse gases per year. An additional 595 projects have not yet been constructed, but have the potential to release an additional 208 million tons of greenhouse gases per year. So now you know that, well, you already know the climate crisis was here, but that plastics are closely connected to the environment. We all know that the climate crisis is here, and hot will only be hotter, wet wetter, and dry drier. Plastics are the petrochemical industry's plan B as they see housing and transportation becoming more fuel efficient. They are investing more and more money into building out the plastics industry, and that is why we are seeing this kind of thing. So much of our food packaged in plastic. If you've seen a plastic bag full of bananas or a cucumber wrapped in plastic, you've witnessed Plan B for the plastics industry. No one is demanding more single-use plastics. I take offense every time I read or hear that there is a demand for single-use plastics. And just to make this perfectly clear, ExxonMobil is the #1 producer of plastics. If plastics were a country, it would be the 5th largest producer of greenhouse gases. Think about that. Plastics contribute more to climate emissions than all of Europe or South America or Australia. Plastics contribute CO2 emissions from the time the fossil fuels and chemicals are extracted to make plastics to the time they are incinerated or break down into microplastics. In 2022, Beyond Plastics published a well-researched report entitled "Plastics Are the New Coal." It's on the Beyond Plastics website if you'd like to read it. So what about recycling? We can't talk about plastics without addressing the myth of recycling plastic. Recycling plastic is a false solution to the plastic waste crisis, and it always has been. When the U.S. government started to tackle the problem of plastic waste in the 1960s by proposing regulations, the petrochemical plastics industry pushed back and started their campaigns like the Make America Beautiful campaign to put the onus of plastic waste back on the individual and to make cities and towns pay for disposal. The industry still insists that the issue with plastic pollution is not that there is too much plastic produced, but that people are littering and not disposing of plastics properly. The latest push by industry is for so-called chemical recycling, which is really just a euphemism for incineration. It's also called pyrolysis or waste to energy. It's extremely toxic. It's also extremely, burning plastic is very, very toxic. But the process of recycling, mechanical recycling, is also, it's very expensive to recycle plastic. So no one in the industry really wants to do it. It also creates new unintended chemical additives. So when you melt down the plastic to make a new plastic, other chemicals will form. So only about 8.5% of all plastics ever made have been recycled. And actually, Beyond Plastics did a study about the recycling of plastics in the United States. And it looks like right now only about 5% is actually effectively recycled. Ellen Rothman sent me a little video clip with Jan Dell this week. She's the leader and founder of the Last Beach Cleanup. And she says the only thing that the petrochemical industry has ever recycled is their own lies about recycling. So this graph here shows you basically where most of the plastic ends up. 40% in landfills, 32% is ending up in the environment. Either that's flying off of garbage trucks, it's ending up in waterways, going out into the ocean. It's partly litter. So in Massachusetts, we do incinerate a lot of our trash, but worldwide, that is a relatively small percentage. And then recycling here, you have the 8%, and then only about 2% is actually effectively recycled. Okay. So what about these bioplastics? So this has been a big push lately to go for bioplastics or compostable plastics. But they're not really compostable in the true way that we think of compost. They do not make a material that you would actually want to enrich your soil. Most so-called compostable plastics will not break down even when they're left in the ocean or soil for over a year. 5 Gyres, which does a lot of work on plastics, did an elaborate in-depth study of bioplastics and determined that it's really just a lot of greenwashing. And this will sort of explain why. So plastics are made up of a polymer carbon background, and then chemicals are added in, but the chemicals don't really bond. So the chemicals are sort of floating in this makeup for plastics. And that is why they constantly leach or leak out of products into our food. And these chemicals even leach through clothing into our skin. So plastic, I like to say, is stable, but it's not inert. Chemicals, again, make plastics flexible or hard. They add color, and they make sure that they don't catch on fire easily. Some of the chemicals you can see here that are used in plastics are phthalates, bisphenols, PFAS, and flame retardants. And these chemicals are known as endocrine disrupting chemicals. So they bioaccumulate in our bodies, and they contribute to all these modern health epidemics. So there are cognitive issues, there's all kinds of cancers, infertility, low sperm counts, thyroid disorders, neurological disorders, including ADHD and autism, Alzheimer's disease, and obesity, because there are things called obesogens that are also added to plastics. So it's not just the chemicals that are a problem with plastics in terms of human health, but also microfibers. So this is a photograph that shows a microfiber in a snowflake. And this one shows a microfiber in a plant stem. So where are these microfibers coming from? They are coming from our clothing, and you can be found all over the world now. In addition to microplastics, microfibers, we also have microplastics, micro and nanoplastics. And they are created when plastics break down and deteriorate. The microfibers shed off our clothing, off of synthetic clothing constantly. Well, natural fibers shed off of natural clothing, natural fibers too. But they also end up in the waterways when we wash, when we do our laundry. This chart just shows how many micro plastics are found in bottled water. There was a big study that came out this year. You do not want to be drinking water out of plastic bottles if you can avoid it at all costs. So now all these tiny particles of plastic are now in the air we breathe, the water we drink, and in the soil where our food is grown. They are especially prevalent in sea spray, and although our oceans are now full of microplastics, the soil is even more contaminated. Some people now joke that we are living in the Plasticine era. So here we have microplastics on the bodies of insects. You see all these colored microplastics. These were found in the Adirondacks, in a very remote part of the Adirondacks. So now when you begin to see this, you begin to see how we're actually breathing in microplastics and drinking them. So what are they doing to our health? They've been found in the placentas of newborns, in breast milk, in our poop, our blood, in our lungs, and hearts and brains, and they're linked to colon cancer, as I said previously, Alzheimer's disease, lung disease, and heart conditions. The latest study was microplastics are definitely connected to heart attacks and strokes. So you've probably heard that we are inadvertently consuming about a credit card's worth of plastic a week. But that's not because anyone's grading up credit cards, which, by the way, are made of polyvinyl chloride plastic, but because microplastics are everywhere. This is a new cartoon from the New Yorker. And I would be remiss if I didn't address the issue of artificial turf. Artificial turf is all part of the petrochemical industry's Plan B. It's highly toxic and constantly sheds microplastics into the air and water and destroys soil. And this this is my sign on the left. Real grass is cool. I am appalled that Newton is seriously considering putting plastic all over the field where we have the Indigenous Peoples Day event every year. The poster on the right-hand side is by Carrie Percival. She's an activist and artist who's been working with the Friends of Roosevelt Park to keep plastic turf out of an environmental justice neighborhood in Malden. So the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about now is textiles. So early in the presentation, we saw that textiles are the 4th largest contributor to plastic pollution. This is because of the introduction of fast fashion in the 1990s, which is when the synthetic clothing market started to expand, and for multiple reasons, including exploitative working conditions, really took off. I took this photo of a clever ad for Woolrich clothes in a New York City subway station in January. It's hard today to buy clothing that's made of completely natural fibers. And there's some of the natural fibers I list here, and some of the synthetics are up above. A lot of clothing is now only worn a few times, and much of it ends up in places like this, the Atacama Desert in Chile. If you'd like to learn more about natural fibers and why we should not support fast fashion, visit the website FiberShed. I just discovered that the other day. In Massachusetts, it's against the law to put textiles into the trash, and in Watertown, you can drop textiles off at the recycling center and put them in the Helpsy bin. So plastics, as many of you already know, are a huge ocean issue. The current estimate is that 2 garbage truck loads worth of plastic end up in the ocean every minute. That's up from 1 truckload a minute a few years ago. If we don't do something drastic soon, there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. If fish and corals can even survive in the warming and polluted seas. And this albatross died from eating plastic. Many seabirds mistake orange and pink plastics for shrimp. Okay, we need to do something about all this plastic. If our bathtubs are overflowing with plastic, we need to turn off the tap and get things under control. So And if we don't do something, we're all gonna die. This is the photo I used for my Halloween card last year, but I collaborated with, she just goes by Katrin Spies. She's a performance artist based in New York City, and she came up with this amazing concept of putting a person to look like a corpse in a clear plexiglass coffin filled with single-use plastics to show how plastics are killing us. So of course, one way to affect policy change, is to getting to know all of your elected officials, especially those at the municipal and statewide level. Of course, Markey is on the federal level, but there's the hat, Jean, but I don't think you can quite see the nip bottles, but you can really see the straw necklace. That was with Maura Healey at the state convention in September. So legislation can come about through collective action. The first Earth Day occurred in 1970 and led to the foundation of the Environmental Protection Agency and the passage of the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. This year's Earth Day theme is Planet versus Plastics, and I hope you now understand why this is such an urgent issue. The Earth Day website is excellent and very educational. I encourage you to explore it, and thank you for including that in the advertisement for this presentation. So here are the Boston youth in action in September of 2019. We lost a lot of great momentum in the climate movement during COVID. It's slowly coming back, but we need all hands on deck now. And here the youth are at the Massachusetts State House in December of 2019. And I love this quotation by Rebecca Solnit: "The revolution won't happen by people staying at home and being good." So we all need to get out there and support legislation. If we don't do something to stop the petrochemical industry, it will kill us, including the birds, animals, and fish. The photograph of me from behind was taken at the March to End Fossil Fuels in New York City on September 17th of last year. It was featured in the online. Somebody needs to mute, Liz, maybe?
Okay.
And the group photo shows how many people showed up for the Beyond Plastics Hub. Had over 100
This
people.
is a Zoom meeting about plastics. It's a Watertown.
Okay, and actually right behind us was the 350 group, so it was kind of fun because Ann Munson and Sean Harrington were there. Bill McKibben was also there, so that was an amazing day. Everybody had such a fantastic time. The weather was beautiful too. All right, this is how to find your elected officials, but I think all of you know how to do that. And then these are some of the bills that Beyond Plastics Greater Boston has been working on. All of our bills are presently out of their respective committees, and they're all in Ways and Means. Most of the single-use plastic bills were kind of lumped together. Rebecca Rausch was the sponsor. Senator Rebecca Rausch was the sponsor of this Plastic Reduction Act, and she's also the chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Environment and Natural Resources Committee is what it's called. And she brought all these single-use bills out together. So like the separate bag ban bill and the separate, I think there's a straw bill, which I don't have on here. Skip the stuff, if you're not familiar with that term, is about having restaurants not automatically give people plastic cutlery, little packets of ketchup or tamari or whatever they have. It's only given upon request. Plastic straws too, but we can talk more about this after the presentation. So you can always write postcards. I have lots of postcards at my house if you want to write some more. This is me with Holly right here. Thank you to, and there's Caroline in the background. Thank you to all of you who have come to the postcard writing parties. We still have time to help get these bills passed. We really want to get this bottle bill passed. So this legislative session goes until July 31st. So this is the time to up the pressure on everyone. Well, Steve is on board with all this stuff, but Will Brownsberger could still use a little more nudging along, I think. Okay. So here are the 10 worst plastic polluters by brand. Note that Coca-Cola is number 1, PepsiCo is number 2, Nestle's number 3. This information is from Break Free from Plastic Pollution, which has been running brand audits from cleanups around the world for the past several years. So actually, I'll just put in a plug now for when we're doing the Charles River cleanups this year. It would be great if we could track a little bit what we're finding in terms of how many bottles and cans, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be like what brand of bottle or can, but if we're finding lots of water bottles, lots of nip bottles, whatever, that will help. That information is wanted by Plastic Free Mass, which is, I'll talk about that in a little bit more in a second. So anyway, from doing this work, I learned that Coca-Cola was the #1 plastic polluter in the world. I actually saw a movie about Coca-Cola's plastic promises. And then I heard that COP27 was being sponsored by Coca-Cola. So COP is the Conference of the Parties, the International Climate Summit that happens yearly now. And I was just totally outraged when I heard that. So I asked Break Free from Plastic Pollution if anyone was organizing a protest, and the answer, of course, was no. So I decided to organize a protest myself, beginning outside. This is in a little park outside of the UN building in New York City. We ended up with 20 people. It was great. Everybody wore some combination of red, black, and white, basically because that's reflective of the Coca-Cola colors. And then we marched along 42nd Street, went to Grand Central Station, ended up at the New York Public Library, and we had these great postcards that we passed out, letting people know what we were doing. All right, so for your own health, I urge you to get rid of as much plastic in your life as you can, but try to avoid plastic packaging whenever you can. But remember, it's not your fault if you can't find some food free of plastic packaging. Follow the old adages, waste not, want not, and use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. Try to wear clothing, especially the clothing that is closest to your skin that's made of natural fibers. But make sure you move beyond your own self-actions. These Matryoshka dolls represent the widening of the circle beyond yourself. Start small and move into a wider and wider sphere. We need to affect institutional change at our workplaces, schools, and faith communities, and to pass policies on a municipal, statewide, federal, and international level. Make sure you vote for candidates who care about climate justice and human and planetary health. So actually on the global level right now, there's something called the Global Plastics Treaty, which is amazing. And they are going to be having their fourth session debating it in Ottawa starting on the 23rd of April. I think it's the whole rest of that week, Tuesday through Sunday. Then on a national level, we have the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. Representative Catherine Clark was one of the co-sponsors of that, but she is no longer. Most of the Massachusetts delegation supports it, but given the situation that we have in Congress right now, it's not really moving forward. But it is good for people to hear that you want to support that. So there's all kinds of actions you can do. But this idea came to me because I was talking to Rebecca Altman, who's an historian on plastics, who's based at Brown, and that was her suggestion, is like, just go bigger, bigger, bigger. Like go to your place of work, and then your city, whatever. You get the idea. All right, so think about all this. This is an existential crisis, and we all need to work together to end the climate crisis and plastic pollution. So please join us at Beyond Plastics Greater Boston. We have monthly meetings online, and we also do a lot of in-person activities, and we have fun. So bring your ideas. We've already had 2 pretty successful campaigns. We pressured the New England Aquarium to stop selling so much plastic junk in their gift shop. We ended up having a meeting with 3 people who work at the aquarium in leadership roles that had to do with managing the gift shop. And then we had a petition too that we sent out to them, and they were already kind of leaning in that direction. They realized that it was very bad how much plastic stuff they had in that gift shop, but it's very different now. And this is just like in a 6-month time period. We also joined forces with Toxic Free Future to do a standout at the REI in Boston against PFAS on REI camping equipment and clothing. And that was successful. So anyway, we've had a few little wins, hoping for more. Thank you for listening. We only have one Earth, so we all need to work together to take care of it. This is the banner I made 2 years ago for Earth Day. But I was at a big event, but I took this picture making it look like there was no one else there. But anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will stop my share now and happy to answer any questions if I can. So I have not looked at the chat. I don't know if there's anything in the chat, but better to just, oh, thank you for the clapping, Mishi. You can just come off mute and talk to me if you want. Thanks, Connie and Sue Ellen. Yeah, Ernesta.
So I'm curious, some of your successes, the last one you mentioned was REI. So what did they agree to do as a result of your?
Oh, they're not putting PFAS on any camping equipment or clothing anymore. I mean, my daughter like says, "Oh, Mom, you had a big win." We were part of a national campaign, and Toxic Free Future. Well, the man who came to talk to us, his name is Mike Shady. He REI is based in Seattle. He's also based in Seattle, I do believe, but he got all these other groups on board, and because REI is so focused on outdoors and health, it was a very good target. It was a very good target. And also PFAS is getting so much attention. So I paired up with Laura Spark. She's with Clean Water Action. She actually had no idea about the connection between chemicals and plastics, but she knew a lot about chemistry. But so now we've done more things together. So Laura and I organized this small standout. We talked to the manager of the Boston store. They were very receptive. So it was all just part of a national campaign, but we have to take our wins where we can, right? So, now, did somebody else have a hand up?
Jennifer did.
Oh, Jennifer, yeah.
So you mentioned about the postcards and postcard writing parties and stuff. How can we get copies of, or where can we get the postcards? Because I have friends that I could probably share them with.
Oh, that's great. So I have a bunch at my house. Many of them are, Leslie has designed several of them. The plastic kills, we have that as a small postcard. We also have that fossil fuels, plastics equal fossil fuels and toxic chemicals, or plastic equals toxic. And then it says fossil fuels and chemicals underneath. And then we have one that's for bags, but then this one, the one with the mermaid underwater, the bottle bill one, this was designed by a woman named Cara Bean, who's the artist in residence at the New Bedford Whaling Museum right now. And one of the members of my group, her name is Mary Lou Nicholson. She has a group called Be the Solution to Pollution. She does a lot of work on the South Coast. She just finished making a giant nip bottle monster using 35,000 nip bottles. She made this with students at UMass Dartmouth. But she commissioned or asked Cara Bean to make this cartoon. And then it was my idea to turn it into a postcard. I think it's very effective. So Jean, you have your hand up. But Jennifer, you can come to my house, or I could drop them off at your house, because I know you probably don't want to go out right now.
I'll email you and follow up on it.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, Jean, you want to come off mute?
So I'm interested in the PFAS bill.
Yeah. All right. So,
would that impact the synthetic turf that we have? So
we hope so, right, Jean? You and I know that you can't make artificial turf without having PFAS on it. So the latest I heard on the PFAS, and actually it's good we're on this call together, Alan Gordon from Green Newton wrote to me, and he wants the pressure put on John Lawn. So John Lawn is the head of the committee that's dealing with the PFAS legislation right now, and it's getting weaker. What right now what they're looking at, according to Alan sent me a letter, and he asked me actually to send it to all the Watertown city councilors that I know. Tony is still on this call, so, yeah, Tony's still here. I will, he just sent it to me a couple days ago and I will send it out, but people should, Connie, you too should pressure John Lawn to support the strongest possible version of that PFAS bill. That's the bill that Kate Hogan and Julian Sear are the co-sponsors of. And I heard it was getting a lot of good momentum because we have a lot of serious problems with PFAS in our drinking water across the state right now.
Well, I noticed that it said something like ban PFAS with toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
I mean, is it, okay, so if you recall our meetings with BBN, they kept assuring us that their Synturf doesn't have PFAS with toxic chemicals. They have, I don't know, pure PFAS or something. And I just wondered how they've worded the bill. But if you could send me a copy of that letter,
Yeah,
and-
sure. I can do that.
because I'm in We3C and I could take it to We3C. Maybe it could send John Lawn a letter.
Ooh, that's a really good idea. I'll do that. I'll definitely do that. You know, New York State passed a ban on synthetic carpeting. I don't know the details of it, but it included artificial turf as carpeting. But it doesn't go into effect for another year or two. I think it goes into effect in 2026. And now the artificial turf industry is completely ramping up production and they're trying to install like 200 new artificial turf fields in New York City right now.
That's,
And a friend of mine in the Catskills is dealing with it, but Beyond Plastics now is on board to help people who are trying to advocate against artificial turf, and they have a lot more information and really good resources on their website.
I will look at the website, but
Yeah,
I think because it's an issue that we've taken up before, it would be appropriate to
yeah.
bring it to,
So Ellie
meeting.
Goldberg, she's in Newton, and she has been doing a lot of work on artificial turf in Newton, and she's been writing a great newsletter. She just interviewed a high school, well, I think she's out of high school now, but a young athlete. Her name is Olivia from Newton, about what it was. The knowledge that Olivia has now, she's probably 19 years old. She's appalled, and it's great to be getting some young people
Right.
interested in the whole cause. But Ellie is a good person also to be in touch with because she seems to be really up on what's going on in Newton, where they're using the Ruth Ann Fuller is trying to use ARPA funds to put this artificial turf at Albemarle. Pam?
Yeah, I just saw a question come up from Melinda, who said she had to go now, but she pointed out that a huge use of plastic that we see as gardeners is all the little pots from the nurseries. And there's a few that will accept their pots back, but not everyone. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
I know it drives me crazy. Also, there is a woman who has joined our mailing list, but she's on the Cape now. Who's been I think she's a landscaper or a gardener, and she's been trying to deal. I don't know what she's doing. She was trying to recycle them. I think it's kind of hopeless. Black plastic, which is many of them are black plastic, is impossible to recycle.
That was my next question.
Because the scanners, the electric scanners can't read black. That's why recycling black plastic is really impossible. And it's also black plastic the hard black plastic often has recycled electronic components in it. So it's one of the most toxic forms of plastic, which is really unfortunate that they're using it for food, right?
Yeah, that was my question, is that it's really frustrating when you get takeout, and even from places that claim to be greener, and it comes to you in a black plastic tray and you can't recycle it. If they were at least to switch, a few places do white trays, are those still recycled? I know you're down on
Yeah, yeah,
recycling.
exactly. They're more recyclable than black plastic, and they're not as toxic, right? But still, we need to stop all this. It's so insane, right?
Yeah,
Insane. But we are up against the two biggest industries in the world, the chemical industry and the fossil fuel industry. Yeah, Ernesta, I see your hand up.
Just speaking about the black plastic containers for takeout and so forth, that in Newton, you know about the new laws they have, which is banning that kind of thing, right? I'm wondering if we should be trying to do that in Watertown.
Yeah, I think I told you, so the skip the stuff bills and the act to reduce plastic, they include bans on black plastic, but I was hoping statewide action before I started going back to the town. But yes, Newton has been has a skip the stuff bill. I'm not quite sure if it's gone into effect yet, but I think it has because they passed it in the fall. And they're also working on banning like plastic water bottles and a few other things. Shar Ertel is a member of my group, of the Beyond Plastics Greater Boston group, and she is the owner of Fulfilled Goods, which is a great refill store on Washington Street across from the Whole Foods. And she has food in there. So she has like bulk nuts, bulk tea, some bulk grains. So if you're looking for bulk items, you should definitely go there. She also of course has all kinds of soaps, and I'm using her toothpaste tablets now and wooden toothbrushes and all that kind of thing. But she's very involved with the Newton ordinances along with Alan Gordon. So yeah, they're a great model. Newton is a great model, but they're a lot bigger city than we are. So any other questions right now? Should I look in the chat? I'm not really looking there. So if there's anything in the chat that anybody sees that you think would be appropriate.
mostly I just see a lot of people thanking you in the chat.
All right.
And I also wanted to comment that I've heard a lot of bits and pieces of
I
this
know.
story,
Yeah.
but you put it together in such a clear way. It was really helpful to get a picture of how this is all working and what, like you say, what we're up against.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. The more people learn about this, the better, I think. Yes, Sue Ellen?
I was wondering about any efforts related to plastic wrap, saran wrap type stuff.
Film is actually the absolute worst thing. I mean, it gets into the water. Fish are so confused by it, and animals, and there's definitely, I don't know anything that's happening with film. Don't use it. Don't, it's leaking chemicals into your food. Like I haven't used any kind of saran wrap in decades. I just put, like saucers over bowls when I put food away in the refrigerator. And I have gotten those beeswax sheets for bread. I wrap bread in them.
I was wondering in terms of educational campaigns. I too have invested in some of the beeswax stuff, and
Yeah.
sometimes they'll use foil if I need to.
Right.
Again, covering stuff. I just wondered in terms of education, if that's part of the campaign.
Oh, you know what? No, nobody's been really talking about saran wrap much. I mean, plastic bags are the worst thing. I'm on the recycling advisory committee, and Anya is so funny. She's always putting those signs up on Galen Street, like no plastic bags in your recycling, because they really gum up the works. That was the first thing I wanted to do when I got on the committee, and it was to go and see a recycling facility. So we organized a field trip to go up to Peabody, to see where all our trash gets recycled. And there are people standing, mostly Black men without masks, standing over these conveyor belts. That's their job all day long, pulling plastic bags out because they're getting caught in the works and gumming up the machines. that's why a statewide plastic bag ban would be really nice, because we have over 160 different cities and towns with different plastic bag bans. We really need a uniform ban across the state that's really well written, that doesn't allow any kind of thick plastic bags. Because yeah, some of the towns' ordinances are not well written. Like Cambridge allows those thick bags, I think. Anyway,
I think Newton at some point also had thickness sizes that
I know that was all
thing.
from the Sierra Club. Remember, Deborah? Clint Richmond, the Sierra Club was recommending that. It was so frustrating, that whole Mills thing that we discussed ad nauseum. How many mils we were gonna allow these bags.
I don't know if it's worth reminding ourselves, but as I recall, I don't know how many, if it was more than a decade ago, but I'm sure it was. I just don't remember what year it was, where I had suggested for an annual meeting that for Watertown citizens that we focus on plastics. And out of that is when the plastics working group first started, and then eventually that kind of went further. But I remember I found someone at Woods Hole from Oceanographical Institute to come, and Clint also came. We had like a panel discussion and just the horrifying slides and discussion about what was happening. And Newton was just starting to pass stuff, but eventually it went forward.
Yeah, so I actually do a lot with Clint now. But I don't think I was at that meeting. But Deborah, who like I said to Ann, I thought it was Ann Munson who decided we should watch that movie Bag It, because I remember the Roots and Shoots kids came to it. I thought Shara and Ann organized it, but Ann doesn't remember organizing it. So maybe you organized that screening of Bag It. You're
muted, Deborah.
Muted,
Deb,
Deborah.
you're muted. Deb, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
Trying to
He's
unmute.
trying to find it.
The space bar.
Unmute. Okay. No, it just wasn't. Okay. Yeah, I remember Anne doing the Roots and Shoots. I'm sure she did it. I do remember the Baggett movie. That might have been a Watertown Citizens.
Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe Sue Ellen, maybe
Yeah.
that was part of your thing. But
It was
that-
after that. Yeah.
After the annual meeting. Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
the video and stuff that was shown by the guy from the
Woods Hole.
from Woods Hole, yeah, from
Yeah.
Bowie. And I remember just the people being just horrified by some of the slides that he had that really got
So-
people shaken up and wanting to start something in Watertown and through Watertown Citizens that would get working on plastics.
So, well, thank you for getting us all started, Sue Ellen. See what you've done?
This my sister-in-law is working at Hui, and I called her and said, Becky, who's a good person to pass?
There's a woman, Kara Lavender Law. She's at Sea Education Association. She's a really good person on plastics also. I don't know if she's also at Hui, but she lives down there. But yeah, the good news is actually there's getting more and more attention is getting paid to plastics, right? So, and more people are beginning to understand the connection between human health and the environment and the climate crisis and plastics. So that's great. I think it's getting some more mainstream press now. But but part of me thinks that's because I'm so obsessed with it that everybody sends me articles. But do all of you feel that way? Do you feel like that's getting more attention now?
I think so, but it may be only amongst,
Yeah, those
Oh,
who
yeah,
care.
Yeah, I mean, every week.
Well, or some of it I feel like people get overwhelmed by the enormity of the issue. And I really loved how you had so many it's just good ways into it. But I was also thinking about kind of now I only buy biodegradable plastic bags for trash, or I use paper bags or whatever. But I think about kind of this idea of what the solutions are. And some of it really feels like state legislation is and obviously municipals starting that as well. And some of it is youth. So I always feel like there's such good math in those graphs. It'd be so interesting to have some good math problems to go with them, but that's just me.
Oh, I like that idea. That's a great
A
idea.
friend of mine teaches in Boston, and she did this is really for Deb, but she did a whole project-based learning around 15-minute neighborhoods. And she had each of the kids figure out their 15-minute neighborhood and then do all this other thing. But
Oh
I
my
think there's
God.
a lot of, it was amazing. There's so much that if people feel like they have some control or some way of making sense of all of it, and then some action that they can take, that it makes a huge difference for students, I think.
Yeah, well, even I, like, the whole reason I got started was that Bagot movie, because I felt like it's an overwhelming issue. But then when you can just focus on this one thing in your one town and be successful, that feels so good.
Yeah. When you asked about attention, it occurs to me that I think most of the attention has actually been on the toxics that are in the plastic, like BPAs, and now there's this huge push to get PFAS out of the water. But trying to push against the fundamental problem of using plastic in the first place, it kind of feels like most people think it's just too big to even try.
Yeah, we're not going to make that much of a difference with our own individual choices either. I mean, a year ago, I was saying, you know, these virtuous, what I call personally my own virtuous self-actions, don't make a difference, right, in the mainstream. I mean, I've been bringing my own bags to go grocery shopping with me since I was an adult, so for more than 40 years. And during that time, plastic production has just accelerated exponentially. So those individual actions, but now I'm telling people, because now I'm really aware of the health effects. I mean, I've always been partially aware of that, but I feel like it's really important for your own health to avoid plastics too. So, and also if you start living that way, you realize you don't really need them, right?
Yeah, well, I've always leaned towards natural fibers in my clothes, but yeah, but it's just the fundamental of just getting rid of, I mean, oh, well, we had the plastic straws. We got rid, I mean, there was that awful video about the turtle, and then a lot of the plastics, some of the plastic straws went away.
Yeah, the straw bills are in the is this somebody we know, Kathy Albert? Yeah, I showed the movie, the what's it called, The Last Plastic Straw or something at the library, or the movie was just called Straws. But there's a woman named Jackie Nunez who's based in California who started this group called The Last Plastic Straw. Plastic straws are part of the Skip the Stuff bill, and they're part of the single-use plastic bills that that Rebecca Rausch put forward. But you know, you think, oh, it's a small thing, but actually, I read on the Earth Day website that I can't remember the number, but the equivalent of like 10 school buses filled with plastic straws are made every day. Right? Is that crazy? So even those little things can make a difference. I mean, look, I feel like we definitely have fewer plastic bags in the river in Watertown now, and I never see them in the trees anymore. So we'll have to see at the cleanup on Saturday how many plastic bags we find. Last year they were all from Market Basket in Waltham. So anyway.
So am I remembering correctly that some towns at least banned the nip bottles? Is that right?
Yeah, you are remembering correctly. So a bunch of places, Chelsea was one of the first places, and then there's several towns on the Cape.
The Concord?
Falmouth, Woods Hole is one. What?
Concord was just water bottles they were talking
Yeah, Concord was water bottles. Arlington has banned water bottles. Newton is trying to do water bottles. There's more towns that have, Great Barrington, where my mother lives, has banned water bottles. You got me started on the nip bottles. Oh, I know, I was gonna say, so Plymouth, there's a group called Sustainable Plymouth, and this guy, Ken Stone, he's also part of my Beyond Plastics Greater Boston group. They work to ban, and I think they have town meeting, so they got a ban approved, but then the big beverage came into Plymouth, and it's not gonna go through. It's really appalling.
Oh,
Ah,
But the expanded bottle bill will at least, if it goes through, at least we'll have a deposit on nip bottles. So right now in Massachusetts, there's no return deposit on nip bottles. And Maine does have a return deposit, it's only a nickel, but if we get it up to a dime, those bottles are not gonna be lying on the ground in Watertown anymore. I won't have any more sources for my, this is the part that goes around my hat. The hat is, yeah, over there, right over there to my left. But I mean, I find so many nip bottles in Watertown. I leave them on the ground all the time. Oh, Sarah. Putnam's here.
but once a week, and I'm at MIT, teaching, and I'm just so horrified. Every time I cross Memorial Drive, there's just tons and tons of nip bottles. And when I come back out, I usually take, a box or something, and I just start collecting them. And I'd say it was on average, like 80 to 100 nip bottles that I'm picking up off of the strip, the green strip of Memorial Drive. It's just horrifying.
It is horrifying.
When I walk down Spring Street, whenever I'm walking down Spring Street, I make sure I take something to put trash in, because it's just, oh my God, the trash is.
Well, a lot of people buy the nip bottles at Barca Spa, and then they throw them in the parking lot there. So was it now 2 years ago, trying to get this expanded bottle bill passed, I met this guy from Falmouth or Woods Hole. He worked on the nip bottle ban down there. And I said, why do we need to ban nip bottles if we expand the bottle bill? And he said, well, the thing is, Eileen, they're always going to get thrown out the window of people's cars, because people who are drinking those nips don't want their family members or their co-workers, their bosses, to know that they've been drinking. So that's why they toss them out the window. We see them up and down Palfrey Street even. People who cut through from Mount Auburn over to Waverly, they'll just toss those nip bottles out the window. Like Sharon gets tons of them at her corner there.
Huh.
But it has to do with alcoholism and behavior, behavioral stuff. I think Newton might have banned the nip bottles too. But if they have a return deposit on them, I mean, I'll be picking them up and making more money off of them instead. But Sue Ellen, I don't know if Mary Lou needs any more now that she just made that monster out of the 35,000. But the first thing she did with the students with those 35,000 nip bottles, I sent her a couple hundred that I found in Watertown, was they spelled out "break free from plastic" in nip bottles on a giant football field, I think a grass one, at UMass Dartmouth. And now the same nip bottles have gone into the monster, which was in a parade last Thursday. I didn't get to go down to it. It was the day we had our Pigs Gusset Stonecutter movie screening, but
I'm not creative enough to do anything with the bottles I've been picking up off the.
well,
Memorial
I have a
Drive.
lot of them too. And I was thinking about making a dragon costume, because for the March to End Fossil Fuels, I actually wrote a song that's based on Puff the Magic Dragon, which is "Stop the Magic Dragon that lives in the sea." I can't even remember the lyrics right now, but petrochemistry rhymes with sea. But
That's great.
yeah, I thought it would be fun to have, to sing the song. So Fred Small and Ellen Epstein, who are both incredible folk singers, are also in my group. And I keep trying to think of an event where I can get them to play their guitars and sing. And they sing some of these funny lyrics that I've written to a couple of different songs. So
Sounds good.
we tried to sing the songs in New York at the March to End Fossil Fuels, but there was so much noise and so many, it was so exciting. And there's so many other bands that we just got drowned out. It didn't really work. The other funny thing about the march was how I made everybody wear red, black, and white, which is my whole thing of it, because it looks really good when you're a small group. but everybody kind of spread out very quickly. And all of a sudden I'm walking with two people I don't even know. And I was like, what happened to our group? One of them said, what did she say? She said, well, we might be all separated, but at least we're all together. Like basically we're all working on the same issue together. I mean, everybody's working on climate change issues and peace. Jean, that's how Jean left. Looks like Jean left, but
So
I
I'm just
met-
curious, Max and Kathy, I don't think I know you. Wonder, do you mind introducing yourselves?
Hi, I'm Kathy Alpert, and I just saw the link and I figured I'd click in and see what it was all about. I support what you're
Plastic.
doing.
It was a great presentation with a lot of good information.
I just came in and I was
I
going
know,
through my
yeah.
email. It's too late, I guess, to, are you gonna have a replay of it?
It was
Well, every-
recorded, so it will be posted on the Watertown Citizens website at some point. So you'll be able to watch it. Yeah, the slides are great.
I'm
It's
always
great that you guys are doing this.
Kathy,
happy
do
to
you live
talk
in
to you.
Watertown? Kathy, where do you live? In Watertown?
I live on Spruce Street.
You do? Okay. In Watertown, great.
I've lived here for 25 years.
Oh,
And before that, I lived in Charles River Towers and I was renting.
Oh,
So I've lived in Watertown really since the 80s.
Max, can you tell us something about yourself?
Well, Max is my dog's name. I've lived here since 1996, and I pick up litter along the river every time I walk my dog, and even when I go bike riding. When I see a piece of plastic bags, I specialize in stuff that can be recycled. But I find I used to walk around and pick up as much as 3, grocery bags worth of litter a day. And I feel like there's much less litter than there used to be. I'm talking 10 years ago, which is nice, but there's still way too much. And I see nip bottles all over, and I put them in with my dog bag. And I don't know, I'm just the guy that when I was a kid, so I'm 68 years old. So in the 60s, my father would do the same thing. And so he set a good example that I'm keeping going. And that's me. I walk my dog named Max along the river, and there's always something in his bag besides his deposit.
So Max is your dog's name, and what is your name?
Douglas.
Douglas. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, thanks for joining.
Yeah.
yeah. Those nip balls are awful. So Douglas, maybe you can join the Charles River cleanup this Saturday. This group will be near the Stop and Shop on Pleasant Street from 10 to noon.
I might, but actually, because I pick stuff up literally every day, multiple times, I'm probably going to pass. Plus, my wife is in the hospital. She's battling cancer. So I'm going to have to be focused on her issues for now.
Yeah, that's.
But I thank you for doing that.
Almost all cancers are related to the environment. Very few.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you've probably read in the news a dozen times how cancer is hitting younger people these days than it used to. And I think it's the plastics.
Yeah, well, colon cancer is really awful. So as you're seeing that exponential rise in plastic production that we've seen over the course of the past 20 years, paralleling that is this exponential rise in chronic disease. The microplastics are definitely connected to colon cancers. So I recently screened a movie. I don't know, Jackie, I think came, and Tony maybe, called We're All Plastic People Now. It's a PBS documentary film. I screened it at First Parish Watertown, but you should all watch it. It really is very alarming, the connections between plastics and human health. We also screened it at the State House on January 22nd. Unfortunately, most of the legislators left before the screening, but some of them stayed for it. We had over 100, we had like 150 people in that room, 428. I gave a talk on the toxicity of plastic at that. We had somebody else, Mary Lou, talked about beach cleanups and the nip bottles, and Kirsty Pecci, who runs a group called Just Zero, talked about the bottle bill. Anyway, the other thing I didn't really talk about is this plastic-free mass group that Beyond Plastics Greater Boston is now part of. It's a coalition of progressive political groups and environmental groups from across the state that are coming together to try and advocate for plastic reduction bills. So we have people from BEAT, which is the Berkshire Action Environmental Team out in the Berkshires. We have people representing some of the different river groups. And then the main groups are Conservation Law Foundation, Just Zero, Oceana, and I'm with Beyond Plastics. So there's one of us from each of those groups on the steering committee of the Plastic Free Mass group. So let's hope it makes a difference.
What is the name of that film that you just described?
Oh, we're all plastic people now. And it's a PBS documentary film.
Thank you. Check it out.
Just came out in January. It should be pretty easy to find online.
Thank you.
I also really like the Y Foundation that's based in Copenhagen. It has a really great series of films. They're a lot trickier to get hold of, but I do actually have some active links if you want to watch them. There's the Coca-Cola's Plastic Promises. So that movie is what really got me enraged about the fact that COP was being sponsored by Coca-Cola. The second movie is called The Recycling Myth, which shows that these companies like TerraCycle, if you've ever heard of TerraCycle actually is a company, Sue Ellen, that will take all those films and
Yeah.
tells you that they're recycling them. Well, in this movie, they documented that they all ended up, a lot of these supposedly recyclable plastics, which are not, ended up in these dumps in Bulgaria and other places in Eastern Europe. And Jan Dell, who said that thing about the recycling lies is the only thing that the petrochemical industry has ever recycled. She's done tons of work tracking TerraCycle stuff and finding out that it actually getting basically thrown in the trash or incinerated. So she had a lawsuit against them, and they had to change some of the labeling on, there's a brand of crackers, I think it's called July or Summer or something like that. Anyway, they had to take off.
August,
No,
late
it's
August.
No, isn't it July? Anyway, it doesn't matter, but they were no longer allowed to print on their bags that their bags are recyclable, because they're not.
Wow.
Anyway, the third movie in that series is called we are the guinea pigs, or we're all guinea pigs, something like that. But that movie also is very alarming about the health consequences of plastics. So the thing with these endocrine disrupting chemicals is that they basically say they're a hit and run. So you can get exposed to them in utero or as an infant, and then you might not see the consequences of that exposure until much later, which is also why these thyroid cancer, breast cancer, infertility, all of that stuff is showing up. That movie, the Guinea Pigs movie, focuses on ADHD, infertility, breast cancer, and a narrowing of sex differences that we're seeing. Anyway, oh, Pam, you just put the link in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's free. It looks like you don't even have to sign up to be a member of PBS. You just play the link.
Right. No, that's what I really like about that movie. It's super accessible. A lot of these movies are hard to find online. Oh, the other thing I really like is the story of Stuff, that produced The Story of Plastic, which is a great movie. They have tons of really fun short, some of them are animated movies that are great to watch. But I also have to say again, I really love that Earth Day website. I'm so glad Susan Falkup sent it out so everybody in Watertown faces climate change. And then I ended up doing all the quizzes they had about plastic, and I thought, oh, I'm going to ace all of these. Well, I did ace all the ones that had to do with health, but I did learn a few new things. Like, I didn't realize there were more plastics in the soil now than in the ocean. So that was one thing I learned from that.
Landfills.
Yeah, and then all the plastic that people use as mulch, I mean, in farms, and then they plow it back in that's why some soils are not absorbing water anymore.
Some mulch is made of plastic, some mulch.
Why would they put plastic in mulch?
Because
Have
it's
you
a
ever
very
seen-
effective weed barrier.
Yeah, weed suppression.
And it's also used for heat-loving crops like tomatoes and eggplant.
Well, I
Ah,
can see putting like a, you know, a plastic piece over the top of the garden. Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
We're talking about covering a field.
Why would they?
Covering an
plow-
entire field with
on an
plastic?
industrial level, they'll put down black plastic to
Oh,
soil underneath.
terrible.
And of course, artificial turf. Were you here when we were talking about artificial turf, Kathy? You came in late.
No.
Yeah, so artificial turf is a huge issue right now. It's very toxic, and of course, it destroys the soil underneath. And also the turf industry is using a lot of oh, we lost Jean, right? But they're using organic infills now. There was so much pressure about the crumb rubber, and the crumb rubber, do you all know this, is often pulverized tires or old tennis shoes or something that's put in as the infill between the plastic blades. They put this stuff called crumb rubber. Well, now they've come up because so many people have talked about the PFAS and the microplastics and the crumb rubber. Now they've developed not only the organic infills, which is what Watertown used last year, which is just plastic coated pine pellets, but now they're producing plastic carpeting that's like double thickness. The blades, I think, are more the fake blades are more matted together or something. Anyway, it definitely is a tsunami of plastic pollution. That's my banner that I made 2 years ago. So
Such a struggle and such a fight around the turf stuff in Watertown. It's just unbelievable.
and the same
council.
story plays out in every single city in town, Sue Ellen. Every single city in town has, Williamstown actually just had a great success. There are a woman named Susan Abrams. She teaches at Williams College and she's part of the Beyond Plastics community. She was able to stop a plastic field going in at Mount Greylock High School.
Oh.
She said people didn't really care about the PFAS. They didn't really care about the long-term health consequences. I think it was the turf burns and the injuries that finally convinced people that it was a bad idea.
Huh.
But we had the same thing that we've had here. Is like you get the athletic directors bring in the cute young student athletes, and the protesters are always the bunch of old hippy dippy types who come in to talk about the health consequences. And they listen to the young people. And also some athletic directors are getting paid off by industry. And they've just bought this whole myth that their kids are going to be better football players or something if they play on plastic. And you keep hearing that same argument. Oh, we're the only town that doesn't have artificial turf. We need to be competitive with all the other towns. So I
yes.
know.
Well, one teacher said, oh, we don't want to go back to the medieval times and have natural fields. It was,
Really, Connie? Oh, that's outrageous.
yeah, at one of the meetings, that it's more education is needed.
Yeah, educate, activate. Educate, motivate, activate. That's what I like to say. And now I'm into organize, agitate, advocate. Those are my 3 latest words, right?
Irritate.
Oh, irritate. I like that.
I
Those
have
are
to go,
my
but this was absolutely fabulous, Eileen. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
good. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
I'll
Eileen.
see you tomorrow, Connie, at the Mother's Day Walk for Peace meeting, 5 o'clock.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm going to leave too, but I really enjoyed meeting you and I'm going to check out some of these things and
Great.
maybe
Yeah,
come
Kat-
back again. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Kathy,
Yeah, you
definitely
too.
check out Watertown Citizens. We do a lot of great work. We have a lot of different
Well,
work.
I've been on your list for a while and I finally decided to check in and I'll come back again.
All right.
I enjoyed meeting you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm gonna end.
Everybody, I think we're sort of winding
All right.
down.
I'm glad it went well. And sorry about the slowness with the technology in the beginning, but
Not a problem. It's all
all
good.
right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks.
Good night. Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot.
much for
Thanks a
talking
lot.
with us.
All right. Bye, Max. I mean, Doug.
All the best, Douglas.
Okay, now, there we go. Stop.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It still says recording. Oh, let's try this. Oh, co-host. How do we- Damn it. Shit. No, nope. Nope. Oh, I know. Come on. Damn it. Go back to meeting.